Please, somebody, anybody, my children have not eaten since yesterday.
Nosy, is this not the same Gozi that used to sleep in my late brother's compound? Get away from my store. You are scattering my customers.
Aha, see her now, the great madam of the big house, now begging like a common street rat. God is indeed watching everybody, oh.
Beggars should not kneel in front of good shops. It brings bad luck to business.
I am not begging from you, Namdi. I only asked for what belongs to my husband, your own blood brother. You took the land, you took the house, you left me with nothing.
That land is mine. Everything my brother had is mine now. If you continue to disturb my peace in this market, I will deal with you the way this village has never seen. Namdi, have you no shame? This woman buried your brother with her own hands. Old man, mind your business before your own name enters trouble too.
My daughter, why do you cry in the dust while wicked people laugh above you? Mama, I did not see you come. Forgive me, I have nothing to give you. I myself have nothing. It is not what you have that I have come for, my daughter. It is what you gave. Ah, another beggar has found her beggar friend. This market has become a gathering of useless people. Careful, daughter of pride. The mouth that mocks today may beg tomorrow.
Is this old witch threatening my wife? Somebody should drive these two mad women out of my market before I do something everybody will regret.
Take this, my daughter. Open it only when the sun has fully set and your children are asleep. Do not let greedy eyes see what is inside. Mama, what is this? I do not understand. You fed me when your own stomach was empty. Tonight, the village will remember your name.
Wait, old woman, what is in that box? Give it to my father. Where did she go? She was just here. Kelesh, where did she go? Where did she go? She was just here. Chimo, I have lived 73 years in this village. I have never seen a person disappear like smoke in broad daylight.
Whatever this is, I will guard it until the sun sets, just as she said.
Give me that box now, Nogozi. Whatever that witch left behind belongs to this market, not to a beggar woman like you.
Namdi, leave it. Something is not right here. Did you see how she vanished?
It is nothing. Superstition. Village nonsense. But mark my words, Gozi. Whatever is in that box, I will take it from you before the week ends.
The sun had not even fully risen over Umuoke village when Umozi's stomach began to twist with hunger she had learned to carry silently. She woke her two children, Chidera and little Obina, with lies about breakfast coming soon, tied her wrapper tighter around her thinning waist, and walked the dusty path to the market where she knew, deep down, no one would give her anything for free. 3 years had passed since her husband Emeka died in the motor accident on the Enugu-Onitsha road, and in those 3 years, his own brother Enamdi had swallowed everything Emeka worked for. The 4-bedroom house, the 2 hectares of farmland, even the small provision shop Umuzi used to run with her husband's blessing. Enamdi had walked into that house on the 7th day of mourning, while Umuzi's eyes were still swollen from crying, and told her plainly that tradition demanded the property return to the family line, and since she bore no son old enough to inherit, she and her children would have to leave. The village elders had grumbled but done nothing because Enamdi's money had grown loud enough to silence most mouths in Umuoke. By the time Ngozi reached the market, her feet were kicked in dust and her sandals had worn through at the sole. She knelt near the entrance where traders passed, not to beg exactly, but to catch the eye of anyone who remembered kindness. It was there that Enamdi found her, flanked by his wife Patricia, dripping in gold, and his son Kelechi swaggering in clothes that cost more than Ngozi earned in a year. The humiliation that followed, the mockery, the dust kicked at her, the threats was nothing new to Ngozi. She had grown a thick skin over 3 years of it. What she did not expect was the old woman. The stranger appeared as though she had stepped out of the very air itself, wrapped in a shawl so faded its original color could not be guessed, her eyes sunken but strangely bright, as if lit from somewhere deep inside. Ngozi remembered her, not from that day, but from 2 weeks earlier, when she had passed the same old woman slumped weakly by the roadside near the stream, clearly starving, clearly forgotten by the world. Ngozi, who had only a small ball of garri wrapped in leaves for her own children's dinner that night, had knelt and split it in half without a second thought, giving the stranger a share, though it meant her own children would eat less. She had thought nothing more of it. Kindness to Ngozi was not a transaction. It was simply who her mother had raised her to be. Now that same old woman stood before her in the market, placing a small carved wooden box into her trembling hands, speaking words that curled around Ngozi's heart like a warm cloth. That she had fed a hungry stranger when her own children's plates were empty, and tonight the village would remember her name. Before Ngozi could ask another question, the old woman was gone. Not walked away, not lost in the crowd, but simply gone, as though she had dissolved into the dusty afternoon light. Enamdi's shouting, Patricia's uneasy silence, Kelechi's grasping hands at empty air, none of it mattered to Ngozi in that moment. She held the box against her chest and walked home with a strange, unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling she had not carried in 3 long years. Hope. The walk back to the tiny rented room she shared with her children felt longer than usual. Every step weighted with the promise the old woman had made. Chidera, only 11 years old but already carrying the seriousness of a girl who had grown up too fast, met her at the door with worry etched across her small face. "Mama, did you find food?" she asked, and Ngozi's heart cracked at the question because she had not one grain of rice, not one piece of yam. But she smiled anyway, the way mothers do when they refuse to let their children carry the full weight of poverty, and told Chidera that something good was coming. She could feel it in her bones. Obina, only 6, was already asleep on the thin mat by the time the sun began its final descent behind the hills beyond Umuoke. Chidera fought sleep valiantly, curious about the box her mother kept glancing at, but exhaustion won, and soon both children lay still, their breathing slow and even. Ngozi sat alone in the near darkness, the box resting in her lap, her hands still trembling, not from hunger this time, but from something closer to fear mixed with wonder. The old woman's words echoed in her mind, "Open it only when the sun has fully set." She waited, watching through the small window as the last orange light bled out of the sky and surrendered to deep blue, then black. When true darkness finally settled over Umuoke, Ngozi lit the single kerosene lamp she owned, its flame throwing dancing shadows against the mud walls, and with fingers that would not stop shaking, she lifted the small wooden lid of the box. Inside lay no jewelry, no money, nothing of the kind a hungry woman might have hoped for. Instead, resting on a bed of dried cowrie shells was a single folded piece of cloth, old and yellowed, tied with a thin cord. Ngozi's breath caught as she unrolled it with trembling hands, and there, written in careful, aging script, was a name she recognized instantly, her late husband's full name, Emeka Chukwuemeka Okoye, alongside a description of land measurements and a location she knew well, the 2 hectares along the eastern boundary of Umuoke, bordering the stream where she had first met the old woman. Beneath the writing was a stamped seal, faded but unmistakably official, from the old land registry office that closed its doors nearly a decade ago after corruption scandals shut it down. This was no ordinary paper. This was the original deed to Emeka's father's land, the true legal inheritance that had passed to Emeka before his death, the very document that would have protected Ngozi and her children from everything that followed.
Tears streamed down Ngozi's face as understanding flooded through her. Nnamdi had known. He must have known all along that this document existed somewhere, hidden by Emeka before his sudden death, perhaps entrusted to someone in the family who kept it silent out of fear or complicity. And now, through means Ngozi could not begin to explain, it had found its way back to her, delivered by hands that seemed to belong to no ordinary woman at all. But the box held one more secret. Beneath the folded cloth, tucked into the corner, was a small note written in the same aging hand, addressed not to Emeka, but directly to Ngozi, as though the old woman, or whoever had truly written it, had known this day would come. The note read simply, "What was stolen in darkness shall be returned in light, but greed does not release its grip easily. Be ready, my daughter, for the storm before the sunrise." Ngozi barely slept that night, her mind racing between joy and dread. She knew Nnamdi would not simply hand back what he had stolen because a piece of paper appeared. Men like Nnamdi, men who had tasted wealth and grown addicted to the respect it bought them, did not surrender easily. And true to the note morning, the storm arrived before the week was through. It began quietly at first, strange, almost unbelievable happenings that the village dismissed as coincidence. Nnamdi's prize generator, the loudest and most powerful in Umuoke, the one he used to mock his neighbors during the frequent blackouts, suddenly refused to start, no matter how many mechanics he summoned from Enugu town. His shop, which had thrived selling imported goods at inflated prices, began losing customers overnight, as though an invisible hand had turned the village against him. Patricia's gold jewelry, the very earring she had worn while mocking Ngozi in the market, went missing from her locked bedroom drawer without any sign of forced entry, sending her into a screaming panic that woke half the compound. Kelechi, who had been preparing to travel to Lagos for a business deal his father had arranged through a wealthy contact, found himself suddenly and inexplicably turned away at every meeting. Doors that had been open to him for months, now closing without explanation, phone calls going unanswered, deals collapsing one after the other, as though his very name had become cursed in the mouths of the men he needed most. The village began to whisper. Old women who remembered stories from their own grandmothers spoke in hushed tones about spirits who walked disguised as beggars, testing the hearts of the living, rewarding kindness and punishing cruelty in ways no human court ever could. Paise, still shaken by what he had witnessed in the market, went from compound to compound, recounting how the old woman had vanished into thin air, and slowly the village began to connect what they had seen with what was now unfolding around Nnamdi's household. Nnamdi, of course, refused to believe any of it. He blamed bad luck, blamed enemies, blamed anyone but himself, growing more desperate and more erratic with each passing day. He tried to have Ngozi thrown out of her rented room, paying the landlord to evict her. But the landlord, who had heard the whisper spreading through Umuoke, suddenly refused the money and instead offered Ngozi free lodging out of what he called respect for a woman favored by the ancestors. Nnamdi tried to bribe the new land officer in Enugu to destroy any record that might validate Ngozi's deed. But the officer, unsettled by rumors reaching even the city, refused to touch the case at all. 2 weeks after the market confrontation, Ngozi finally gathered the courage to take the ancient deed to the Enugu State Land Registry's modern office, along with Paise as a witness to speak on Emeka's original ownership. The officials, after careful verification against archived colonial-era records that had somehow survived the old registry's closure, confirmed what Ngozi already knew in her heart. The land was legally,
indisputably hers to reclaim on behalf of her children. The seal was authentic, the document was real. Nnamdi's Alem, built entirely on intimidation and the silence of a grieving widow, crumbled the moment paper met law. When the news reached Umuoke, it spread faster than harmattan fire through dry grass. Ngozi, the widow who had knelt in market dust just weeks before, was now, by every legal and traditional measure, the rightful owner of 2 hectares of prime farmland. Land that, unbeknownst to most, sat along a boundary the state government had recently marked for a new agricultural development corridor, multiplying its value beyond anything Nnamdi had imagined when he stole it. Nnamdi's Go Maps was swift and total. Creditors he had ignored for years, sensing his sudden weakness, descended on him all at once. The bank foreclosed on loans he had taken against properties, whose value now looked questionable without the land he falsely claimed as collateral. His shop, already bleeding customers, shut its doors within a month. Patricia, humiliated beyond what her pride could bear, packed what remained of her belongings and left for her mother's village, unable to face the neighbors who now looked at her with something between pity and satisfaction. Kelechi's Lagos dreams evaporated entirely, and he returned to Umuoke with nothing but the clothes on his back and a silence that spoke louder than any apology. Ngozi, meanwhile, began rebuilding, not with anger, not with the vengeance many in the village expected and even encouraged, but with the same quiet dignity that had carried her through 3 years of suffering. She reclaimed the land, and with the sudden interest from the agricultural corridor project, was able to lease a portion of it to the state for fair compensation, enough to finally truly feed her children without fear, enough to rebuild the small provision shop she had once run with Emeka, enough to send Chidera and Obina to the good school in Enugu town that she had only ever dreamed about during her hungriest nights. Word came to her 3 months later that Nnamdi, broken and humbled, had returned to Umuoke after failing to find work or welcome anywhere else, and was living in a single room behind his cousin's compound, surviving on the charity of relatives who once feared and flattered him. Patricia, it was said, had fallen ill from stress and had no money for proper treatment. Kelechi wandered the village now, avoiding eyes, avoiding the market stalls where he once swaggered with such cruelty. The village elders, moved by everything that had transpired, called a formal gathering beneath the old Udala tree at the center of Umuoke, the traditional place where matters of great importance were settled. Nnamdi was summoned. He came slowly, his once proud shoulders bent, his agbada replaced by a plain, faded shirt that made him nearly unrecognizable from the man who had mocked Ngozi in the market months before. He knelt, actually knelt in the dust in front of the entire village and asked Ngozi for forgiveness, admitting before every witness present that he had known about the deed all along, that he had hidden it after Emeka's death out of pure greed, believing a grieving widow would never have the strength or the means to challenge him. Ngozi looked down at the man who had once thrown her out of her own home, who had watched his son kick dust at her starving children, and felt something she had not expected to feel. Not triumph, not the sharp satisfaction of revenge, but something gentler, something that surprised even her. She extended her hand, helped Nnamdi rise to his feet in front of the entire gathered village, and told him that she would not curse him further, that his own choices had already delivered judgment enough, and that if he wished to work honestly on a small portion of the land as a laborer to feed his family, she would allow it, not as her enemy, but as the daughter of Umuoke, who still believed in the possibility of a man learning humility. The village fell into stunned silence at her mercy, then erupted into murmurs of admiration that would be spoken about for years to come. How the widow who was once chased from the market with dust and insults had become the very picture of grace under the weight of vindication. Paezi, tears in his old eyes, declared before everyone that Umuoke had witnessed something rare, true karma, delivered not by human hands alone, but guided by forces older and wiser than any of them could fully understand. That night, as Ngozi tucked her children into their beds in the home that was now rightfully theirs, Chidera asked her mother a question that had been sitting quietly in her young heart since the day of the market. "Mama, do you think that old woman will ever come back?" Ngozi smiled, thinking of the empty space where the stranger had vanished, of the warm, cloth-like feeling that had wrapped around her heart the moment their eyes first met by the roadside stream. "I don't think she needs to come back, my daughter," Ngozi said softly, pulling the blanket over Obina's sore shoulders. "I think she already gave us everything she came to give. Sometimes kindness is a seed, and you never know which stranger is carrying the harvest." Outside, beyond the window, the same stars that had watched over Umuoke for generations shone down quietly on a village that had learned once again the oldest lesson of all, that the hands you feed in someone's hour of need may be the very hands that carry your fate, and that no act of goodness, however small, however unnoticed, is ever truly wasted beneath the eyes of whatever watches over the humble and the kind. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless.